Hello, we're talking to Laura Wise, who wrote an article for Contemporary Southeastern Europe on bargaining and minorities in Serbia. She's making an argument about the kind of economic dimension to ethnic bargaining of minorities. You're looking at the Albanian and the Hungarian minority. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about how you think that particular case, what kind of argument you're making in regard to that case and this issue of economic crisis and minority bargaining?
Yeah, sure. Well, essentially I chose these particular cases because I was really interested in how the structural aspect of minorities and particularly the issue of horizontal inequalities between majorities and minorities ruled through ethnic bargaining theory, which briefly touches on economic issues in sort of most recent literature, but doesn't really fully consider the implications of that, and I thought that was really interesting when you think about all of the economic literature on minority-majority conflict aside from bargaining. So it seemed like a good opportunity to explore how these two things could be interlinked, and these cases were particularly useful because both the Albanian and Hungarian minorities in Serbia occupy very different structural economic positions. And what you have sort of the Hungarian minority is predominantly in a more economically developed part of Serbia, as opposed to the very economically devastated parts of southern Serbia, which the Albanian minority is based in. So that's sort of how the research question came about, and what I found when I was looking at these particular cases is that they both bring up very different issues. So in looking at Albanians, for example, when you're viewing their minority mobilization since 2006 with particular focus on claims made in economic terms, and particularly their perception of their position compared to the Serb majority, it played quite well in terms of what you would expect a minority to mobilize about, what they would claim about, particularly lack of development, and it also really emphasized the quadratic nature of a bargaining game where you have external investment from organizations such as USAID in trying to sort of minimize their radicalization by bringing them back to the table when they've left over economic issues. And so that seemed to sort of really quite show how the potential of looking at economics when you're conducting minority bargaining analysis. But with the Hungarian case, the issue there is that a lot of the claims that they made and a lot of their participation, particularly in the later years of the case, they're doing this through the devolved body to Vojvodina region rather than a particular body specific for just Hungarians. And as you know, Vojvodina is a very diverse, ethnically diverse region, so you don't just have the interests of Hungarians being represented through this. So in the conflicts that they're having with the majority over Vojvodina's budget and whether or not the constitutional allocation is being honoured by the central government, the difficulty in viewing this through a minority bargaining lens is that it's very hard to disentangle Hungarian claims over the budget from other minority actors which also are part of that assembly.
But isn't exactly, I mean, I guess that's also an interesting question, how much economic claims become ethnified? I mean, because of course the underdevelopment of southern Serbia doesn't affect only Albanians, it affects Serbs as well. So it seems in a certain way the risk, if it becomes if it is exclusively channeled through the ethnic lens, that an economic issue becomes an ethnic issue, while you could argue that what you're suggesting is that the case of Vojvodina actually provides for an outlet to see this as being a cross-ethnic bargaining of a region towards the center, which in a certain way reduces the risk of it becoming ethnifized.
Absolutely, I think that certainly you're right in that these issues don't just affect Albanians, and similarly if you were looking at another minority in the other side of southern Serbia, if you're looking at Bosniaks, again, those regions aren't just inhabited by Bosniaks, and particularly in Serbia as well. I mean, if we're talking about economic marginalization of a minority, then Roma would be a clear example, who have a very different relationship with the central government. So yeah, I think you're right in that respect, that this does highlight the problems of focusing on the particular ethnic dimension of economic marginalization. I think I was interested in that because there is a lot of literature which does look at this through sort of civil war and ethnicity and economic resources, and whether or not that this was a route which ethnic bargaining theory should be going down. I think the case studies that I conduct in this research are very preliminary. It's very much an exploration as whether this is a good idea. But based on the sort of the ways in which previous ethnic bargaining theory alludes to the role of economics, I thought that this was worth exploring a little bit more. Whether or not it would be fruitful to go on with that, I think you would need a far more comprehensive analysis, and particularly with cases which actually aren't based in Central and Southeastern Europe.
I mean, I guess also you mentioned the role of external actors, I mean, USAID and so on. To which degree do you sense, or would you think that in southern Serbia, because of the external actors, OSCE and so on, how much have they been crucial in actually also shifting it maybe from an ethnic, I mean, you know, of course, that Albanian community asks for rights as a minority, but also this developmental program, because a lot of the interventions, especially after the civil conflict in 2000, 2001, was then addressed or sought to be addressed through economic development. So I'm just wondering, what is the role of external actors in shaping the agenda and the bargaining by minorities?
I think it's a really important aspect of the game, if you're talking about it as a strategic rational game, which Erin Jenny is when she's developing this theory. And that I think that's something that the Albanian case study threw up, which was very interesting, because you're having, instead of triadic ethnic bargaining between these sort of internationalizing fields of the host state, the kin state, and the minority, you have this fourth player coming in and actually taking the role of a kin state in some in the way that they relate to the Albanian minority. Of course, the rationale for that could be incredibly different, rather than seeking to sort of radicalize or promote conflict. The role of international actors, as you say, is by addressing this conflict, this post-conflict dimension, and promoting stability through development of this particular region, which is focused on a group which has a history of very radical behaviour. So I think that it is a very important and under-examined aspect of ethnic bargaining, which I think this case study raises. I mean, there is literature which questions the impact that does have on minorities, but I think that there is a valid call to bring a quadratic aspect into a bargaining game.
Great. Well, thank you, Laura, for sharing your thoughts with us. And I think, as you rightly said, I think it's a very good and a sort of entry point to explore this issue further. But it also helps to shed some light on interethnic relations in Serbia and how bargaining is used or used very differently depending on your position vis-a-vis the central government, your geographical and economic position. So thank you for the interview, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with us in the article. And of course, there's a lot more in that article.
Thank you.